The buys are so bad that I understand you may have to flex a tight end this week, but I'll try my best to give you some interesting wide receivers near the end. Now, starting off with S tier, you already know you start them regardless of the buy situation. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb. I think this will be S tier for us most weeks going into the future. I will say right now, actually, what's very interesting is if you look at the projections on Underdog Fantasy, they currently do have Igbuka. I want to say like 77.5 total yards, higher or lower, which is actually higher than the projection that you have with CeeDee Lamb. While Igbuka only had about 9.8 fantasy points this past week, this is still a wide receiver that will project out as a borderline top 5 option every single week that you have no Mike Evans and no Chris Godwin. And based off the injury that we just had to Mike Evans, it looks like Igbuka is going to be up here more times than not. This matchup against the New Orleans Saints is one of which the Tampa Bay Buccaneers currently project to score about 25.5 points. So very comfortably, you can put them inside your top 5. Rashee Rice technically is the wide receiver 1 in points per game. He is currently averaging 23.2. We thought it was a good idea to go with Rashee Rice higher than 48.5 receiving yards on Underdog Fantasy last week. And oh boy, he came through at 23 fantasy points and 42 yards. So it was no bueno for us. But regardless, he had 10 targets. This is a wide receiver, and this is an offense that you're going to be very excited about the touchdown upside for every week. You do currently project out the Kansas City Chiefs with an implied team total of 29.5 points, which is only behind the Indianapolis Colts this week. And then you actually have Drake London and the Atlanta Falcons projecting extremely well. Right now, you have an implied team total here at about 26 points for Atlanta. They are currently favored in this game by about 7.5 points. Now, the issue that you may have with Drake London is the fact that the Miami Dolphins defense is horrible all around, but especially their rush defense. So you'd assume that in this game where Miami is going to have a tough time keeping up with them, that you should see Atlanta just run the ball over and over and over again. Now, Courtland Sutton typically is not going to be this high in our rankings, but one, we are dealing with bye weeks. And two, he is going up against the Dallas Cowboys, who have a bottom 3 defense in the NFL. I mean, right now you actually do have the Denver Broncos with a 27-point implied team total. The only offenses that are supposed to score more this week are going to be the Indianapolis Colts, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Baltimore Ravens. So this is the perfect spot to just jam in Sutton, and we'll actually have some wide receivers later on that are interesting as well. I don't know if we're overreacting because one big week for us to go through and put A.J. Brown this high in our ranks, right? Wide receiver 8 seems a little irrational knowing that he's only averaging about 12.5 points per game. He's actually the wide receiver 32 in points per game, but he's sitting up at 7.3 targets per contest. This is exactly where he was last year. And last year you actually had him at wide receiver 13. And I do think that this is kind of a revenge game here for the Philadelphia Eagles, who lost to the New York Giants on the short week last Thursday night. Now, we are now looking at the new number 1 wide receiver for the team of destiny, my fantasy team, with Rome Odunze. Rome, buddy, I just went out there and I just traded for you and invested into you in a big time way. And right now, you have a lot of these pass catchers in Chicago, such as DJ Moore, missing practice on Wednesday. And obviously, if you were to have somebody like DJ Moore miss with a hip injury, all of a sudden, Rome Odunze's expected target share is going to go higher in this offense. Right now, he's sitting with about 25% of this team's target share, and he is sitting with an unsustainable touchdown rate. But ultimately, you have the big play upside. This is a game in which you should expect the Chicago Bears to trail, where you do have the Baltimore Ravens favored by about 6.5 points. Now, George Pickens will be our next name. A toughish matchup going up against Denver. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, their top corner is just going to shadow CeeDee Lamb. It's not really going to work like that. George Pickens is going to get a lot of attention in this offense as well. I mean, he is profiling to be that deep threat wide receiver that has an incredibly high yards per target. He is currently sitting at 11.2 yards per target with a target share that's a little bit lower. So the floor is going to be low with Pickens, but obviously the ceiling is going to be incredibly high every single week. Now, moving over to Zay Flowers. We have not had Zay Flowers anywhere close to our top 12 wide receiver rankings over the past month or so. But that's because you haven't had Lamar Jackson. And every single week we look at the projections, we go and say, oh, crap. Well, the Baltimore Ravens project to be a bottom 5 offense in the league. Well, that is no longer the case right now. If you were looking at right now for Zay Flowers, you actually have the Baltimore Ravens projected to be the third highest scoring offense in the NFL. I think this is going to be a big bounce back spot for both Derrick Henry, Flowers, obviously fueled by Lamar Jackson coming back in. Now, moving over to Ladd McConkey. Ladd, back-to-back weeks here, has had a really nice role in this offense. He actually had 15 targets against the Indianapolis Colts this past week. Obviously, a lot of this had to do with the fact that Justin Herbert just had a zillion pass attempts. Like, even though Ladd McConkey had 15 targets, he actually had only 28% of the Los Angeles Chargers targets in this offense, where he is sitting with an average target share this year of about 21.5%. But he does currently project out to be the wide receiver one in Los Angeles. I think a lot of this is fueled off the target share we've had as of late. I mean, right now on Underdog Fantasy, Ladd McConkey's higher or lower 56.5 yards. Keenan Allen is higher, lower 48.5 receiving yards. And if we look at my guy, the player that I want to be in on, it's going to be Quentin Johnston, who's higher, lower 48.5 receiving yards. And we actually got that with higher 46.5 yesterday, which I am excited about. But obviously, if you want to check out any of those projections or go higher, lower, you can find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description as well as the comment section. Underdog Fantasy is currently the #1 sports app in the App Store. They've been that way for pretty much the past month, because over the past month, they've had the best offer that you can possibly find, which is if you use code FLOCK, you're going to get $100 added to your account after you play your first 5. And on top of that, you're going to be getting a free Justin Herbert pick, higher, lower, half a total yard for the Thursday night game. And you'll be getting free questions that you can ask me in the live streams. And we're live streaming every single day until Christmas. Links in the description as well as the comment section. But Chris Olave will be our next wide receiver. Olave's been very consistent, and Spencer Rattler has actually looked a lot better. And this has led the New Orleans Saints from early in this season projecting out consistently as one of the worst offenses in the league to now projecting out quite well week in and week out. You have an implied team total of about 21 points, which is obviously more than what you have with the garbage offenses such as the Miami Dolphins. And what's actually funny is you do have the New Orleans Saints projected to score more points than the Minnesota Vikings this week, as an example. Now, Michael Pittman Jr. should be in the highest scoring offense in the league. And if you have no Josh Downs, you can very easily move Michael Pittman Jr. up to being a B tier wide receiver. But my expectations at this point will be Josh Downs comes in, he'll steal a few targets. And this is a game against the Tennessee Titans in which you do have a 14-point spread. Realistically, we should expect the Indianapolis Colts to just go out there and run the ball over and over and over again. But Pittman, for sure, is somebody that you're going to start. Now, DK Metcalf is the wide receiver 2 for my own fantasy team. He's averaging about 14.5 points per game, which is a lot better than a lot of these wide receivers in this tier. Now, y'all know I've actually been trying to sell DK Metcalf on my own team, and we've made some videos suggesting you sell DK Metcalf early in the season, especially when he's coming off those monstrous games where he had 23.5 points against Minnesota and 19.5 points against Cleveland. Our reasoning behind this is like, hell, he's averaging 6 targets a game this year, and he's averaging about 0.7 touchdowns per game. This touchdown rate just can't keep up. And yeah, I mean, he has come back down to earth just a bit. He has a tough matchup going up against the Green Bay Packers, but he is Metcalf, so reasonably you can expect that you have some big play upside, which is what I'm banking on. I'm starting him as my wide receiver too. Now, Devonta Smith has been incredible. And with Smith, he's actually averaging 6.6 targets per game so far this season. If you compare that to A.J. Brown, it's only about half a target per game fewer. Obviously, Devonta Smith as well is actually averaging more points per game. And there's a real argument to be made that if things continue to trend in this direction, Devonta Smith is going to flip A.J. Brown in these rankings sooner rather than later. Now, Quentin Johnston will be our next name. Quentin Johnston's actually averaging 16.2 points per game. He's one of the reasons in which my underdog teams are absolutely crushing at the moment. Thank you, Big Q. But realistically, I do think that this is just going to come back down to earth a bit. He's another one of these wide receivers that has a touchdown rate that's over 10%. That's not something that we can consistently bank on going into the future. Over the past 2 games that he's played, he's only been averaging 5 targets a game. Like, Keenan Allen has actually had considerably more target volume. I'm still going to give the benefit of the doubt here to Quentin Johnston, though, just because I do like the fact that you actually have a little bit more of the big play upside, but Keenan's targets are way more consistent. Now, Jalen Waddle will be the last wide receiver in this tier. The Miami Dolphins offense has just hit a new low. I mean, right now they're projected to score 18.5 points. The only offenses that I can find that project worse this week are actually going to be the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns. And obviously, we want nothing to do with those offenses, as you can tell, with the wide receivers later in this range. Now, let's go over and let's look at Tetairoa McMillan. Ted has been very bad this season. He's averaging 11.9 points per game, which is well behind any other wide receiver that we've talked about so far in this video. But he has a couple different things working for him. 1, I think he's an incredibly talented player. 2, we're going to expect that rookies continue to get better as time goes on. And 3, most importantly, you actually have had a quarterback upgrade going from Bryce Young to Andy Dalton. And that's only half a joke. Like, there's a real argument to be made that this offense now projects out better with Dalton than it would Bryce Young. So I'm very excited to see what they look like. Obviously, they are going to be just having to throw the ball over and over and over again, given the context that they're going to be trailing this game in a big time way against the Buffalo Bills. Now, moving over to a Mr. T. Higgins. Now, with T. Higgins and Stephon Diggs, these are actually my flexes this week myself. I have Travis Etienne on bye, so I'm relying on both wide receivers, where most weeks going into the future, I'm going to have to just kind of pick my battle between the two of them. I will say that you actually do have really good projections right now for the Cincinnati Bengals, with an implied team total of 25.5 points. Is actually the best I've seen Cincinnati project since they had Joe Burrow, which is really encouraging. I don't know if this is due to just, one, they're at home against the Jets and maybe the Jets have given up, or maybe you actually have sportsbooks giving Joe Flacco a ton of credit and assuming that this offense is going to be high scoring going into the future. So I do like the projections with this Bengals offense. Higgins has been horrible. He's only averaging 10.5 points per game, but I am excited to start him this week personally. And then with Stephon Diggs, the issue is he's just not an every down player, right? Like, you actually saw him go up to 67% of the snaps against Carolina, and then against Buffalo, he had 12 targets, and I'm sitting here going like, oh, thank God I finally have a breakout wide receiver. He has come back down to earth, even though Drake May has looked phenomenal. Like, Stephon Diggs so far this season has only averaged 6.3 targets per game, has yet to score a touchdown. I will say this is some of the best efficiency, though, that we've had from Stephon Diggs since he was back in Minnesota. Like, if you're looking at his yards per route run, he's currently at 2.88 according to flockfantasy.com. And in comparison to what you had with his best season ever, it was in 2019 with the Minnesota Vikings when he was at 2.97. Now, Wan'Dale Robinson is somebody that you probably have to start. Unless maybe you're in like a 10-team league where you're absolutely loaded, but I would assume Wan'Dale is just going to be an auto jam for most fantasy managers that have him, given the injuries and given the bye weeks that everybody's currently dealing with. You've actually had Wan'Dale back-to-back games here, scoring over 15 fantasy points and being a top 24 wide receiver in fantasy, and he is now up to 7.6 targets per game. I will say that you do have really bad projections here for the New York Giants. I understand that the Giants have been great over the past few weeks with Jackson Dart, and Jackson Dart has looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, or at least one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. But again, I'm always one to look forward with the projections rather than just think what's already happened is going to repeat itself over and over again. And right now you do have the Eagles favored by about 7.5 points at home, where the Giants currently only expect to score more points than the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns. I needed to correct the record with Jalen Waddle and the Miami Dolphins. Currently, sportsbooks have Miami outscoring New York. And then looking at Jordan Addison, Addison's been incredible. And honestly, we may need to just throw in the towel and keep moving him higher and higher and higher in our rankings. Obviously, if you're looking at the snap rate, it's not really intuitive of what we should expect going into the future, because in that game against Cleveland in week 5, he was actually benched in the first quarter just because he was exploring London. He was sipping tea, eating scones. Well, he had 12 targets this past week, 9 receptions, 128 receiving yards. He's actually been pretty capable with his highest mark of his NFL career so far this season of 22.64 for his team's target share, and he's at his highest mark of his NFL career with 2.46 yards per route run. Now, Xavier Worthy will be our last wide receiver in this tier. With Worthy, I want to give him a ton of credit because you're playing with the best quarterback on the planet, and right now you project to be in the second highest scoring offense in the league. But with that being said, it's just extremely difficult knowing that you are going to have Rashee Rice seeing the vast majority of the work, especially the usage once you get inside the red zone. Like with Xavier Worthy, he's actually only had one game this season with 50 or more receiving yards. I'm hoping he turns the corner. I drafted him in a lot of underdog best ball drafts, but by no means is this a guarantee anytime soon. Now going over to E tier, we will have Romeo Doubs in Pittsburgh. Right now, this game has a spread on it like 3.5 points. You do have Green Bay favored. Christian Watson's coming back, but realistically, Christian Watson's first game in here, I don't really expect him to negatively impact the amount of snaps that you are getting for Romeo Doubs. I'd imagine that he's more so in a limited role. Obviously, we've seen Doubs actually be the preferred target for Jordan Love, where he's had 3 straight games with 8 or more targets. Then Khalil Shakir will be our next wide receiver. I'm a little bit concerned for my own team where I have Josh Allen, and you actually have the Buffalo Bills currently projected to be outscored this week by the other top offenses such as Kansas City, such as Indianapolis, and the Baltimore Ravens. Like, I'd really hope that every week we go into it. That's not the case here. And also knowing that you're playing against the Carolina Panthers, realistically, we're probably going to see the Buffalo Bills just run the ball over and over and over again. And it's not like Khalil Shakir has given us any type of consistency. He is the wide receiver 41 in points per game this year. Now, Shaheed's wide receiver 38 in points per game. And like we discussed, like Spencer Rattler's actually been a lot better than I was expecting. And with this, I guess the target volume's at least been there. Like every single game this season, Shaheed's given you 4 receptions. So you kind of know that you're just banking on the big play. But if Rattler can hit him, then, I mean, he can kind of save you from your bye week troubles. Now, Matthew Golden against the Pittsburgh Steelers will be our next call. Matthew Golden looked like he was on pace to have a phenomenal week at the very beginning of that game against the Arizona Cardinals. Trailed off, but he actually did play the highest snap rate that we have seen all year at 73% of the Green Bay Packers snaps. Then DJ Moore will be our next wide receiver. DJ Moore wasn't at practice on Wednesday with the hip injury, and DJ Moore has been very bad all season. We have not seen a game from DJ Moore with more than 6 targets. And I selfishly am really hoping that we do have Rome Odunze coming through and just taking even more away from him. Then our next 2 wide receivers are going to be the San Francisco guys. Kendrick Bourne's still playing a ton. He's played 3 games with at least 80+% of the snaps for the Niners. But Jennings is going to get healthier every single week. And realistically, this matchup against the Houston Texans is very scary, where you do have an implied team total currently for the Niners of only 20 points. Then going over looking at Kayshon Boutte, he's been inconsistent. Like if you were looking at the touchdowns, yes, they're incredible, right? I mean, he's sitting here and he's had 4 touchdowns so far this season, but he's had 20 receptions. And do I expect Kayshon Boutte to continue to score a touchdown on 1 out of every 5 receptions that no, probably not going to happen. Tez Johnson's running a little hot with touchdowns as well. I mean, Tez Johnson, same exact thing. He has 1 touchdown every 5 receptions, but realistically, he's going to be in a really good offense this week, very similar to Kayshon Boutte. The touchdown upside is there, and this team does project to score a considerable amount of points. Then going over to F tier, these are wide receivers that I would typically never talk about, but hell, I mean, maybe you're desperate enough to have to think about it. Troy Franklin's averaging almost 10 points per game, and he's currently sitting with about 6.5 targets per game as well, and you have a phenomenal matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. Alec Pierce will be our next name. I had to play against Alec Pierce last week, and I'm going to tell you, I was irate when he had the best game of his season. He played 91% of the snaps. Obviously, it's going to be very dependent on if Josh Downs plays. If Downs does play, we'll update y'all with the flex rankings later this week, so just make sure you are subscribed. Keon Coleman will be the next name with Keon. Same thing that we said with Shakir is probably going to be an offense that doesn't throw the ball a ton, and they don't project to score as many points as they typically do. Then Alec Ayomatter, you have no Calvin Ridley. You have no Tyler Lockett. He's playing 90+% of the snaps over the past 2 weeks, but the fact of the matter is the Tennessee Titans are so gross that it just simply doesn't matter. Jerry Jeudy is playing a ton, seeing a ton of targets. Like he's averaging 7.5 targets per game, but he's at 4.9 yards per target. I've never seen something so bad. He's averaging less than a yard per route run. Like I cannot believe I've not dropped this guy yet. Then Christian Kirk will be our next wide receiver. I don't know if he's going to be healthy dealing with the hamstring. If Kirk were to play, obviously can move him up dramatically here. But the issue is I don't know Kirk's health, while at the same time, I don't know the setup with Nico Collins either. Xavier Legette, I have in a bunch of Underdog best ball drafts, so I'm very thankful that I at least got one usable week from him this past week against the Jets. But I would be very surprised if this continues. And then Sterling Shepard can be the most desperate of desperate plays. I would be more excited about him if you had no Igbuka, but we're assuming that Igbuka plays, of course. But I think that's all I got for you. Of course, if you wanted to check out any of those projections over on Underdog Fantasy, the link's going to be in the description. It's going to be in the comment section. For the past month, Underdog's been the #1 sports app on the App Store. And the reason is they have the best promos in the industry right now. If you use code FLOCK when you sign up, you're going to get $100 added to your account after you play your first 5. And on top of that, you'll get free questions that you can ask in the live stream. So we're streaming every single day until Christmas. And you'll be able to get a free pick. Sign up before the Thursday night game. It's going to be Justin Herbert, higher or lower. Sign up after the Thursday night game. It'll be a different player. But I appreciate you and really hope I get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.